Hey guys, how are you guys doing? I'm back with another algorithm video from Code Wars, and yeah, if you're new to this channel or to this video, I make playlists of algorithm questions, mainly from Code Wars, just because I really like the platform. They're not sponsoring or anything, but I think it's just a great resource for you guys to go to. There are definitely a lot of different platforms for you to do algorithms, but this is one of my favorite ones, and I feel like the way they test it is pretty simple, and they let you write code with a good selection of code too. But yeah, pretty much what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through this algorithm questions that I've already solved, and just step by step try to walk through it and answer any questions that I might think that you guys would have asked me if you were in person. And so let's go ahead and take a look at this one. This one's called maximum subarray sum, and this is a 5Q, which means it's like level 5. The higher the number, the lower the difficulty, and so this one is kind of, is starting to get to the point where, okay, you might see this at an interview if you're going in for like a job. You'll probably see harder ones, but this is like the start of kind of what you will start to see. And so, okay, let's go ahead and get straight into it. The maximum sum subarray problem consists in finding the maximum sum of a contiguous subsequence in an array of integers, in an array or list of integers. Sorry about the reading. Max sequence, they give us an array, so it takes an array as an argument. And what we're going to do is, it looks like we get the 6, and it looks like they targeted this section of the array here. And so pretty much, what this is telling us is, okay, they're going to give us an array of numbers, and pretty much you're going to go through the list or array in order and kind of add them up, and whatever the max sum is, then that's what they want from you. And that max sum might happen between a group of numbers in the middle. It might just be that first number that's the biggest number, or it might just be that last one, but we're going to have to figure that out. And so they have more directions here. Easy case is when the list is made up of only positive numbers and the maximum sum is the sum of the whole array. And so that does make sense, and that I do test for that um, because you definitely don't want to be skipping numbers that you can be summing up just because the next number behind it is bigger. You want to add to your greatest sum. And okay, so the next one, if the list is made up of only negative numbers, return 0 instead. And so when I was initially doing this problem, I thought that, okay, if I got all negative numbers, maybe I would return the smallest negative number. But after coming back to the questions or the directions, it says just to return 0. And lastly, empty list is considered to have 0 greatest sum. Note that the empty list array is also a valid sublist / subarray. And so same thing as just having all negative numbers. If it has nothing, just return a 0, don't return it undefined. I think initially I was returning it undefined too, and I wasn't passing all the tests. But okay, so what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to walk through this, kind of take you step by step what's happening, and then after that, if that's enough for you, you could leave, watch some other videos, or if you want more clarification, I'm going to walk through this example right here. Walk through it line by line, kind of what's happening, and I have this code pasted into just Node in my Atom, just another JS file, and it'll help us walk through that better. And so let's take a look at this. The method name max sequence, it takes in an array, and I made two variables here, greatest sum and current sum. And so I'm going to be calculating at all times what is that greatest sum, and if you see down here, that is what I'm going to be returning. I'm not returning current sum because maybe by the end, maybe I had a big number at the front and just all negatives at the back. Then potentially, maybe my current sum might be changed, or it might be something different, or whatever the case may be. It can be anything with these random numbers. But the greatest sum, I want to hold on to that, and I want to make sure I know what it once was so that I can return it at the very end. As I already know that I'm going to have to step through this array, and there are various ways to step through an array. And if you get this question on Code Wars and you solve it and you look at the other solutions, I've seen some good solutions on there. So I always recommend or I don't always recommend, but I do recommend that you go and look at those other solutions too. It kind of shows how other ways you could have done it. And so yeah, we're gonna just be going through with a for loop and a lot of if-else statements. We're just gonna do a lot of conditionals here. And so right here, you already know that it's just a for loop we start at the index of 0 and we just walk through the entire array until we hit every single element in that array. And of course, we already expect this array to be just full of numbers or nothing at all. We're not going to get anything weird like letters. Not that it wasn't guaranteed or anything, but anyways, so the first thing we do here is we have if, and we have an else if, and we have an else statement with a nested if. That's kind of the structure we have. And so first we're looking at the greatest sum, which is always going to start out at 0, and we check, okay, the less than what the number we're looking at and the current sum. And so if it is less than that, then what we do is we update the current sum to be kind of what it used to be plus this next number. And the greatest sum also gets updated to be the current sum. Else, if that didn't work out, then the greatest sum is less. Say the greatest sum is less than the array of I. What kind of situation would that be? That would be when maybe you were calculating a bunch of numbers, and in the end, maybe the next number is just way bigger. Then you might just want to start there. I might not have said that correctly, but it'll be explained in the walkthrough. But whatever that case is, the greatest sum is equal to the greatest sum then gets equal to array of I, and the current sum gets equal to that. This definitely needed for cases where maybe you were going through like a bunch of negative numbers and now you finally have a positive number. Then you want that to just be equal to it right away, right here. And lastly, we have we're updating our current sum, which is going to check whether it's actually greater than 0 or not. And this right here is kind of, you might be unfamiliar with it, you might be familiar with it. It's a ternary statement and pretty much is divided into several parts. Current sum equals, that's the first part. This is kind of what we're setting the that's the variable we're setting, or that's the variable we are reassigning a value to. And this over here is kind of the ternary that's happening. We are checking, okay, is the current sum plus array greater than 0? And that's the conditional. Right before the question mark, that's the conditional. And if it is true, we go with this side of the colon. And if it's false, we go with this side of the colon. And so depending on whatever this comes out to, true or false, we're going to assign current sum to this current sum plus array of I, or 0. And so after that little statement, we check again here, okay, is the greatest sum less than current sum? And if it is, greatest sum is equal to current sum. Because if the greatest sum is less than current sum, well, hey, that's not the greatest anymore. The current one is the greatest, and we need to update that. And at the very end, we return greatest sum. And so at this point, that's just a walkthrough. I don't know if I would have been able to understand that with just that. I always like to go through an example myself. And plus, on an interview or something, that probably wouldn't be enough for you to kind of get by. I feel like they do want you to walk through like with an example too. That's just, it guarantees that you really understand it, and that's kind of what they're looking for most of the time. And so I'm going to switch screens. We're going to go to this, let's see, we're going to go to this test1.js file, and I have a bunch of console log statements here, and that was to help me kind of debug as I go through. And let's see, I tested these other ones first. I am testing, okay, does this equal to like 15 or something like that? And does this equal to 0? Does this equal to 0? Does this equal to 0? And just to do it real quick on here, they do. Where is it? 0 here, and 2 zeros here. We get 2 zeros here because, well, let's see. I know for sure that this one, wait, we had a 15 somewhere, right? Yeah, here. That was for that first test. The second test, we got a 0. And let's see. That was the first test going down. We got the 15. Second test, we went down, got the 0. Third test, we went down through that, got a 0. Last one was an empty array, so we didn't go through this for loop. Therefore, it doesn't have this chunk right before that last 0. Okay, cool. So we will go through this one. And as I was debugging this myself, I was getting a bunch of stuff wrong, and I'll tell you which line of code that I was getting wrong. And once I fixed my code to kind of get this test case to work, all of it started working. And yeah, it's pretty random, or not pretty random, but they use random array lists. See, should work on random arrays, and so that was just my passing rate was just kind of fluctuating. But anyways, let's go through this. All right, so this pretty much we're gonna be walking through this for loop, and so if you want to, I don't know, pause the screen, copy this code, and just do it yourself, feel free to. I'm just gonna be walking through it. We're just gonna be going through the for loop, and so we're gonna start here. I is 0. That's just gonna be us looking at the 2. And I put in a couple of console logs. We're checking that number. If we're in the first loop, we're in the first loop, the second, third, and third. And at the end, we do a greatest sum equals to that, current sum equals to that. And that last one is just to organize things better, just to give us a little spacing between these guys. So, okay, let's look at the -2 first. And I really hope that the screen recording is actually flipping screens, because if it's not, I need to do this all over. But anyways, we're checking 2, we're checking -2, so we're expecting that right there. That's good. And so let's see. Our greatest sum right now is 0. Our current sum is also 0. And so let's see. 0 is less than -2 plus current sum, which is 0. And so what is that? That is totally false, because 0 is not less than -2. So we skip that if. And we go here, is the greatest sum less than that? That's also not the case. And so we're not going to go in the first loop. We're not going to go in the second loop. We're going to go in the third loop, because that's just an else statement here, not an else if. And so we check here, okay, current sum equals to kind of what this equals to now. And this will determine, will we reassign current sum to a different number now, or will we just keep it at 0? And I'm expecting it to just stay at 0. Because, let's see here, current sum plus that, which is 0 plus -2, that's the one number we're looking at. Is that greater than 0? No, it's not. And so that's the condition that was being tested. If it was true, then we would do current sum plus array of I, which would be -2, but it's not, so we're going to assign current sum to 0. We are in the third loop. Lastly, since we're in the third loop, we check this inner third condition, which is, I labeled these wrong. These should all be like conditions. And so here, we are in the third inner condition. We checked, or we're not in there yet. We're checking this if. Greatest sum is less than that. And right now we didn't reassign current sum, or what we did, we just put it right back to 0. And so that is not true. We're not going to go in that third inner condition. And we're going to be logging out greatest sum still 0, current sum still 0. We're going to get that line in between. And what we did was we were in the third condition. My grammar, I don't know, sorry. So okay, look, we were in the third loop, and the greatest sum and current sum have not been changed. And so okay, we are now checking the next number, 1, and it shows right here we are checking the 1. And so, I mean, we could already just take a look at this. We're going to expect to be in the first loop, and it looks like they're both going to be updated. And that is kind of what we are expecting. We are trying to get the greatest sum of whatever kind of little grouping we could get in this array. And 1 is the start of it. It could be the end of it. Obviously, it's not the end of it, but it could have been. So we do want to update the greatest sum and current sum as every time we get like an opportunity to do so. And so we are checking, okay, we are checking 1, we saw that. And I'm going to clear this and just run it again because we relabeled that to condition. So we are here now, we are checking 1. And so we go into we look at the first condition, greatest sum is 0. Is that less than 1 plus 0? And that is less than that. And so we will just stay in that first condition after having done these things, which is current sum is now equal to current sum, which was 0 previously, plus array of I, which is going to be our number 1 right here. And greatest sum is also going to be updated to this, whatever this current sum is. And so now current sum and greatest sum is 1. We're not going to be looking at the rest of these because, just how if statements work. And greatest sum 1, current sum 1. We're going to get that line in between, and that is exactly what has happened. we were in the first condition, and that's labeled there, greatest sum 1, current sum 1. And so now we are in this chunk right here, checking the next one right here, -3. And so let's go ahead, let's just walk through this. We know that greatest sum right now is -1. And you know what, I'm gonna comment that right here. Greatest sum is equal to 1, and current sum is equal to 1. Cool. That way we're gonna, I'm just gonna, this is here, I'm just gonna scroll down just so we can see this over here. And I'm just putting this as reference for us. Okay, cool. So we are now looking at the -3. And so, might as well put that there too. Array of I, right now we are looking at -3. Oops. All right, there we go. Excuse me. So we're looking at -3, greatest sum 1. Is that less than -3 plus 1? That's not less than that. 1 is not less than -2, and so we don't go into that condition. We check here, greatest sum, is that less than array of I, which is -3, and that's again false, so we go to the next one, which is just an else statement, so we do this check. Current sum, which is 1, plus array of I, which is -3, that would equal to -2. Is -2 greater than 0? No, it's not. And so current sum, we change that to 0. Yep, current sum, we change that to 0. And we console log the third condition, and we check this last one. Greatest sum is less than current sum. Is the greatest sum 1, is that less than the current sum? No, it's not. And so we don't go into that third inner condition, and we're done with this. Greatest sum is now, or is still 1. Current sum, we change that to 0, and so we should be seeing that, and we have a line. So let's go ahead and check that. Greatest sum is still 1. Current sum, we change that to 0, and now we're on to the next one. Let's go ahead and look at it now. Our next one, let me update that. Our next number we're looking at is a 4, and so, okay, our greatest sum was 1. We need to update it now, and you might be thinking, okay, now we used to have a 1. Do we want to add it to the 4 and kind of get this? And the answer to that is no, we don't want to do that. Even before going to the code, I just want to address it. We do not want that. We do not want to have this chunk, because even though we had the 1 and that was like a good plus for us, it gets totally canceled out by this -3. And if we had that chunk, we would pretty much have to work with a 4, a 1, and a -3, which would be a 2. Whereas if we just started with a clean slate at the 4, we would have a 4 to start off with. And so we don't want this baggage. We're gonna want to drop that. So the greatest sum, we're gonna want to update that also. So let's go ahead and get into this. Greatest sum right now is 1. Is that less than array of I plus the current sum? And that is true. It is. So array of I is 4 plus current sum is 0. Greatest sum is less than that. So we go in here, current sum is equal to current sum plus array of I, and greatest sum is equal to current sum. And so we are probably going to that first condition, and we're going to be replacing both of these guys with the 4. And so, yep. And as I was going through that, you might have been thinking this already. What the heck good is this second else if statement? And I'm noticing on here that I did not even use it. It never went in there. I was assuming that it would probably jump in there at this point, but it didn't. And so, you know what? At the end of this, I'm gonna delete that and see what happens, and then I'll delete it in the Code Wars and see what happens. I didn't debug this all the way through before starting this video, so I apologize for that. But we'll see it live. And so right now, let's make some changes, or let's make some updates to this. And array of I, we're now checking out a -1. And so this kind of where it starts. We already know that the answer is going to start from this 4 and go to that 1 over here, just because it's already here on Code Wars. But let's go see how it happens. We're checking the negative 1 now. And so we already know that we're going to have to continue this. We're going to start with the 4 and we're going to have to continue kind of going beyond. And so let's check it out. Checking array of I, which is the negative 1, is the greatest sum 4 less than array of I plus the current sum. The current sum is 4 and the array of I is negative 1. And so, no, it decreased it. So let's go to the next one. Greatest sum is less than that. No. And let's go here. Current sum is the current sum plus array of I greater than 0 or not. And it is because current sum was just so good. It was a 4 and we're looking with a negative 1, so it's 3. It is, so we go to this side of the ternary this time and reassign current sum to be current sum plus array of I, which is going to equal 3. And so we're in that third condition and we check, okay, greatest sum is less than current sum. Console log third inner condition. I don't think we do that because greatest sum is still greater. At this point, if this ended here, we're going to just return 4 and say that's the greatest sum. We're not going to return that thing right here because the negative 1 is just baggage then. And so, no, we're not going to replace that there. And so we go here. We did make the change, or wait, we're looking at the negative 1 here. We did go into a third condition. The greatest sum remains at 4 and the current sum has been updated to be a 3. So let's go ahead and update this here. And now we are looking at the 2. We are looking at this element right there. And so, okay, we're checking the 2 and greatest sum 4. Is that less than array of I plus current sum? Current sum is 3 plus 2, that's a 5. So yes, it is. And so current sum is equal to, we update current sum and we update greatest sum. So it should be a 5 now for both of these guys. And here we are, and it is. Checking 2, and as a 2, we updated it to be 5 and 5. And so now we're going to be looking at this next one. Checking the 1. Let's update these guys, and we are at the 1. Okay, greatest sum is greatest sum less than array of I plus current sum, which is also true because array of I is 1 and current sum is 5, so that's 6. 5 is less than 6, so we update these guys to be 6 and 6. And we do that through the first condition. And we go to the next one, checking a negative 5. Cool. And so we are, leave those updated to 6. This is the negative 5 we're looking at now. And so greatest sum. Greatest sum is 6. Is it less than array of I, which is negative 5, plus the current sum? And it is not, because array of I, negative 5, plus current sum would be a 1, and greatest sum is greater than that. And so we go to the next one, greatest sum less than array of I, and that would also be false because greatest sum is 6 is not less than negative 5. The last else, we do check current sum plus array of I greater than 0. Is it or is it not? And it's still greater than 0 because that is a 1, and so we make current sum be a 1. And so we, let's see. Yeah. Sorry, I had a brain fart there for a second. Current sum is 1. We log out the current third condition, and we check here. Greatest sum is less than current sum. Is it or is it not? And it is not. Or, yeah, it's not. Greatest sum is still greater than the current sum, and so we don't update that. And we do that. And now I'm also thinking, okay, maybe we're going to try shaving off this also. And so greatest sum remains at 6, current sum is now 1. And so let's go update that. Greatest sum remains at 6, current sum is 1. And now we are looking at the last number, 4. And so let's see. Do we want to combo that up with what we have here? And so checking the 4, greatest sum is less than array of I plus the current sum, which is going to be a, let's see, current sum was 1, array of I is 4. Greatest sum is still greater. And so we go to the else if greatest sum is less than array of I. And again, that's not true because greatest sum is greater. And we are here, and current sum plus array of I, which is 1 plus 4, 5 is greater than 0. Yes, it is. So current sum is updated. Current sum is updated, but at this point, let's see, at this point, it is only a 5. And so over here, greatest sum does not get re-updated. And yeah, current sum is a 5, greatest sum remains at a 6, and we were checking 4. And so let's see, okay, what if this guy was different? What if he was a 5? Then I feel as if that would kind of null it out. The 5 and the negative 5 would kind of reduce it to being kind of, I don't know, being neutral, and it would depend on the next number if they want to continue this little grouping beyond this 5, negative 5, and 5. And of course, if it was a 6, then do they want to just forget about this whole thing over here? They have a 6 and they have a negative 5 and a 6. Well, they wouldn't want to forget about it because we've built this up. We built up a 6 here, and we have a negative 5, and so if we combine this, we could at least get like a 7. And so I think that's kind of where I was justifying this, where the greatest sum was less than array of I. Actually, I'm getting a little confused at this point. Let's go ahead and see what happens here. So yeah, it would be 7, and at this point, the second statement still didn't go through. Like we thought, this grouping right here had a positive 1 to contribute to this 6, so the greatest sum did end up being 7, but that second else if statement still didn't kick in. So let's go ahead and I'm just saying right now that was the walkthrough of this, and we have discovered that maybe some of this code is useless. And so let's go ahead and just delete it. Just delete it and see what happens. Oh, cool! Look, indeed it was useless. Gosh, I had useless code in there. And this inner if was also kind of iffy. Let me delete that, see what happens. Yep. You know what? That's why walkthroughs are important. I would have to say putting dumb code like that in a problem doesn't look good. It doesn't look good while you're in an interview. But if you do this like a example walkthrough, like what I did right now, and you can see, okay, maybe I had code in there that didn't really need to be in there. You could say that, and you could kind of redeem yourself. But at the same time, the mistake has been made, and I apologize to you guys for that. If I had done a walkthrough on my own before recording this, maybe I would have caught it. I don't know. I was just eager to get a video out. I haven't done a video in like 2 weeks or something, so. But anyways, that was this question, maximum subarray sum, and hopefully you were able to follow through with me on that. Yeah, if we had to just walk through that, it would have been a lot easier, but it is what it is. Thanks for sticking with me if you stuck with me up until now. And so I have playlists. I'll probably throw it up, but hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, give it a like, comment. Give it a like, comment on it, subscribe to my channel. I have to admit that I'm not consistent, but whenever I can, I do upload videos, so watch out for those. And thanks for tuning in. Have a good one.